wing room is where we focus on what I need. It's where we're clear in our goals, our values, the direction we're going in. And the reason why we're so good, besides just as natural wiring for humans, why we're so good at our war room, living in the war room, is because we haven't actually built out our win room.
Mhm.
And so that's what we do in the programs is about being very intentional of how to get out of your own way and into the direction of where where you're super intentional with everything you're doing. So in the win room programs, we focus on the win room method, which is EQ, so emotional intelligence, understanding yourself, right? Being aware of self. It's one of the key foundations of being a strong leader. Plus SQ, which is social intelligence, that is understanding others. So understanding others and how do you connect effectively with others and the different people, how they think differently. And then with that, what I call mastering the new ROI, which is return on interactions. So how you are building trust versus breaking trust in every conversation, making money versus losing money in every conversation. And the most important sales conversation, the most important conversation, the first one is the one we tell ourselves in our heads. So that's where we start.
This is Conversations with Women in Sales, an award-winning podcast launched by Barbara Giamanco and now hosted by Lori Richardson. Listen to interviews with amazing women about their journeys in their sales careers, often discussing sales leadership tips, ideas, and strategies. We aim to inspire women to consider or continue a sales career, and for some women to grow into sales leadership. Men, we need your support and appreciate your allyship. Now here's our host, Lori Richardson.
Hey everyone, I am really excited that today I have as my guest my good friend, Jaime Diglio. Jaime has been on previously, not for a while, but Jaime is a founder of the Win Room and she does performance coaching for leaders and sales teams. And I just want to welcome you back, Jaime. So great to see you.
Thank you so much, Lori. I always love talking with you.
Yeah, and we were talking because I have just heard from so many different people about just the time of year it is, the way the year has gone. There's some people that are a little down and out. I feel like in sales and leadership, and we want to bring you some ideas for those of you listening, some ideas, tips, strategies to help you get through the rest of this year and heading into 2026. And if you end up listening to this down the road after these things are pretty evergreen, but we're going to focus right now on the end of the year because November is just kicking off. And I'm excited because there's so much power that we have at our disposal to utilize. And yet people get kind of caught up in their own head games, right, Jaime?
The time, right?
Yeah.
What do we say? Like 99% of it is
Yeah. Yeah. And when it comes to speaking about sales or whether you're in leadership, it's what you focus on that will end up happening.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell us a little about what you do in the win room because I think it's so important and it ties in very well with what I do in talking with people. So you tell me about the win room and then we'll talk more and kind of build on that.
Sure. Well, the origin of the win room came from me being a successful sales leader. I was at Gartner, Microsoft. But what happened for me was I was really successful on the outside, but on the inside, my head game, I didn't know how to manage it. And so I got to a point for myself where I was working against myself in terms of my self doubt and trying to be like everybody else instead of being trying to be like me. And so when I hit that sort of aha moment, burn it, whatever you want to call it, burnout moment, I knew I needed to make a change. And I realized that the stories I was telling myself were not putting me in the best position. And so what I the like I said, the origin of the win room was how do you how do you focus on what I need? And what happens is a lot of training, a lot of organizations have training and development and coaching, but it's very one size fits all. And we know about one size fits all, and it really fits nobody.
Sure.
What?
It doesn't work so well.
It doesn't work so well, and so what I came to realize is, like, I did a lot of research, I had a background in organizational psychology, and I was really good at it with other like, with my clients and leveraging that, but not with myself. So really understanding that every moment of the day, we are living in one of 2 rooms in our head, and on one side, where we are very good as humans living, is in what I call our war room. Our war room is where we work against results. And for your listeners, it's where we work against revenue. So it's where we doubt ourselves, we self sabotage, we focus on our weaknesses, we talk about what we catastrophize. We are very comfortable as humans living in our war room because we are wired to protect ourselves. We have up to 60,000 thoughts a day. Up to 80% of those thoughts that we have each day are negative. Okay. And 90 to 95% of our thoughts that we have today are the same ones we had yesterday. So we as humans are in these loops of just the self-talk, and we are so unconscious to it. We are so good at living in our war rooms that we don't even realize that we're doing. And that was me back about 10 years ago. So this idea, and people are like, oh, I don't have that. That's not me. I always joke when I work with teams. I'm like, if you're human, like this is just part of being human. So the competitive advantage is we want to get you out of your war room and into what this other space is, what I call our win room. And our win room is where we focus on what I need. It's where we're clear in our goals, our values, the direction we're going in. And the reason why we're so good, besides just as natural wiring for humans, why we're so good at our war room, living in the war room, is because we haven't actually built out our win room. And so that's what we do in the programs, is about being very intentional of how to get out of your own way and into the direction of where where you're super intentional with everything you're doing. So in the win room programs, we focus on the win room method, which is EQ, so emotional intelligence, understanding yourself, right? Being aware of self. It's one of the key foundations of being a strong leader. Plus SQ, which is social intelligence, that is understanding others. So understanding others and how do you connect effectively with others and the different people, how they think differently. And then with that, what I call mastering the new ROI, which is return on interactions. So how you are building trust versus breaking trust in every conversation, making money versus losing money in every conversation. And the most important sales conversation, the most important conversation, the first one is the one we tell ourselves in our heads. So that's where we start.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think of it like supportive beliefs and limiting beliefs. And when you think about it, this time of year, people are saying, oh, it's been a tough year. That's what I've heard a lot of people saying. Sales have taken longer or they've just disappeared. I've had to work harder than ever before. Oh, the holidays are coming up. Nothing really happens during the holidays, just like nothing happens in the summer.
Right.
It's like it's never a good time, but it's always
Right.
a good time. So we have to acknowledge these things. Like they don't go away. Like you said, Jamie, if you acknowledge it, but then if you can flip it, that's what I do with people is to encourage them to think about that may feel like it's true for you, but what if it wasn't? What if it was the best part of the year that you've ever had in your life? You don't know that yet. It could be amazing for you. So how would that look and what would that sound like? And that ties right into your win room, which I think is so important. So what are some things people can do? I mean, other than they can join your program, which I think would be great. But can you give us a couple of tips or
Yeah.
ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, well, from what I experience with lots of sellers and a lot of leaders too, is that the similar when we talk about these like negative self-talk, they also have gotten into just these habits of they just say the same things over and over again.
Yeah.
So they just keep repeating the same lines to their prospects and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
And so where the historical sort of how we were taught a long time ago is to like put pressure on and sit in their driveway and all this stuff, like these crazy things.
Yeah.
But getting really real with the customer and in talking about what it's important to me to understand where you're at, said prospect, because I want to make sure that we're on the same page. What potentially is holding this back? Is it like really getting underneath it? And I am a big believer in anchoring your values. If your core value is trust, right? Or connection or predictability. I really value predictability. For me, it's really important to make sure that I'm able to give you what you need within X amount of time. And that's something that I really, value getting back from the customers that I have the best relationships with. So to be able to be predictable about how we're going to be working together. So that's one thing. And like really like instead of like pulling back, which is a lot of times they don't want, we don't want to hear the answer.
Yeah.
So we avoid it and we like, oh yeah, it's like still in the pipeline, still in the pipeline, still. But like really getting in with the prospect to sit at their side of the table. And what I mean by that is understanding what are all the moving parts and the realistic ability to get this thing done. Where there's no miscommunication. So when we talk about like what you're saying versus what they're hearing, asking those qualifying, like those questions around, okay, what is one thing? Maybe you don't know that's not going to happen, but like, what is one thing that could hold us back right now? It's important for me to understand, what is the number one thing that would keep this moving forward? I
Yeah.
mean, these are basic things, but I really encourage to get into that curiosity with your prospect. And this is also going to uncover how well you have a job you've done ahead of time in terms of building rapport with them. Are you seeing it beyond sale as well? Does your prospect see this as just you're trying to get it done and gone, one and done? So this belief in that if you've done all the right things, and what I mean by all the right things is that you've been transparent, they have the agreement or whatever contract that you're working on. Just how do you visualize that taking it into that next interaction? How are you seeing that they are going to be using your services? So like putting it into what's the ideal outcome and how are you visualizing that happening versus where our brain goes, which is all the things of them saying no, going with a competitor,
They're probably not interested because they didn't get back to me.
because that's the story. It's so much easier for us to sort of self-sabotage and in retreat.
Yeah, and for years, I've always thought, until I hear back from them, I don't know. You just have to learn that until someone actually tells you no or tells you what's happening, don't assume that you know what it is because sometimes people get sick, they have family issues, they take time off, they go on trips. I had someone tell me the other day, they were telling me, "Follow up with me. I'll be able to tell you within 24 hours if we're going ahead." And I was like, "Ooh, wow, this is really exciting." And then I didn't hear from him. And so I thought, that's interesting.
Right.
Happens all the time. And so when I did follow up, I just said, What did you decide to do?" And they said, "Oh, we've pushed this into 2026." And so for the time being, I said, "Hey, thanks so much for getting right back to me. And I'd love to jump on a call so that I can find out a little more detail from you." And we haven't had that conversation yet, but it's one that we're going to have because, I'm going to be clear with them and honest with them. I'm not in pressure to close the business. but I want to help them. And so I want to understand what might be holding back them going forward. And I think it's important to be comfortable to call someone and not be uncomfortable. Like, ooh, it's going to be hard to have that conversation now that they've said no. It's no is a good answer.
Right.
It's better than a maybe or an I don't know or a no
Right.
answer.
Right. And it's easy to see, especially depending on who you surround yourself with. So if you're around a lot of people who are, other sellers who are really negative, or they're like, it's their story is not your story.
Right.
Their story is not your story. There's plenty of years. Like I remember in 2000, when I was selling in like 2008, when it was just awful.
The tough year.
And if I listened to everybody around me, right? But like I was doing my thing. I made my number. I crushed my number in 2008. But everybody else, or a lot of people around me, they weren't. And it's like your determination of you've done the right things. And so sometimes the deals don't happen because of things that are completely out of your control. But what are the things that are your controllables? Your controllables is how you show up, how you communicate, your intention, being aware and present in every conversation, every interaction. Today, I often say sometimes it's quite a low bar because there's so many sellers that are just they can't be present. They're just you could see it. They can't be in the moment with the client. And so
Yeah.
like this is one of the things that we practice in my programs is right, your presence is the present because what do buyers, what do just anybody, what do they want? They want to feel seen. They want to feel heard. We hear this all the time. They want to feel valued. And why don't they?
Yeah.
Because you're not listening to them.
Right.
So it's some of the sort of the techniques that I teach is really listening for someone's listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not what you say, but listening for someone's listening. And so we think that remember I said there's always three sales conversations. I think we've talked about this before, but your first sales conversation is the one in your head, what you think you're going to say, right? The second is what you say, like what actually comes out of your mouth, which is different than what's up here.
Yeah.
And the third and the most important is what the person hears.
Yeah.
So what does the person hear and how do you know what they hear? Because every person is listening to this right now. They're all listening from their own background, their own concerns, their own what deal they have going on, what their situation is. So they're listening differently.
Yeah.
And one of the most effective ways to understand about someone's listening is I always teach this is, at the beginning of a meeting is saying, what would be most helpful for us to cover today? I want to make sure you get what you need. But at the end of the meeting, saying, was this meeting effective? Was this meeting helpful? Is there anything else you need? They go, no, yes, it was helpful. If they do say it isn't helpful, you say, well, I appreciate your feedback. What would have made this more helpful, valuable? And then you get them that after. But generally 99% of the time they say, yes, this meeting was helpful. It was valuable. And you say, excellent. I appreciate your feedback. I'm curious, what was the most helpful thing
Yeah.
that we covered?
That's when you know if they heard you.
Well, so yes, but also what we want to know is what they specifically heard that was most helpful to them specifically,
Yeah.
because that is the data that we need to know that they care about. So then that's the thing. If that's what they care about, that's the thing we hear, whatever that thing is that they care about. We're trying to
Yeah.
understand what they care about when sometimes we can't decipher it or they can't
Yeah.
communicate. But that's how then that becomes the thing you follow up with.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. So listening for someone else's listening, trying to understand what's the problem behind the problem or what's the delay behind the delay.
Yeah.
And so there's so many different reasons for that. And so if we can really be present and just listen
Yeah.
and be able to have that connection with our prospect or customer, it's going to make you stand out amongst the majority of sellers because they don't know how to be present in a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I was thinking when you were talking about this, and when someone tells me, and it turns out to be legitimate that they're just not going to deal with it till after the holidays, I look at that as building my second pipeline. I'm looking at my next 30 days, 60 days, but also that's great. I can build up a big pipeline to kick off 2026 with. And so there's no downside to me because I'm going to have more conversations. Now I know I need to get some more conversations going to find out who we can be helpful to before the end of the year, because we know there are people that have budget that's sitting around, there are people that have needs, and the abundant thinking goes not if there's an opportunity, but it's where is the opportunity? Because if you ever feel down and out, go drive around and look at all the trucks on the road. That's what I like to do because there's
Yeah.
so much commerce going on. There's so much business and opportunity. It doesn't matter what you hear in the news, doesn't matter what you hear about downsizing and there's all sorts of things that are always happening. Business is cyclical. We saw that in 2008. We've seen it in other years, and it bounces back. And there are sectors and segments that are doing really, really well. And so it's just a matter of figuring out the puzzle piece, like where is that, not if it's going to happen.
1,000%. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of sellers make is when they don't get the sale when they want it, they behave very childish, like, they change their behavior very fast.
Yeah.
And I always think of that as like, you just done all this work and they're not gonna get like, you behaving like that is not gonna work. It's gonna keep you in the war room, and it's definitely not gonna get you where you wanna go. But understanding, if you've had this transparent interactions with your prospect, you've built mutual trust, your ability to work through that situation because you've identified that it's actually a real blocker or whatever, got it. Like, this is life, right? And also thinking about who else is in that buyer's network that's gonna then, if you shut it down, like they're gonna number one talk very negatively about working with you. But if you keep it open, who else in your network would be somebody that would be good for me
Yeah.
to speak with? And so you think about it from your reputation. What do you stand for? What do you believe in? How do you stay consistent with what you say you value and the type of relationships that you want to continue to build with your buyers, with your customers, and just your brand?
Yeah, and what was the lessons learned? Because most likely it wasn't a well-qualified opportunity. Maybe not. It could be something that changed in the 11th hour, but many times we have not properly qualified. We didn't include all the key people that we needed to. And so we need to do a little honest soul searching about what happened and how could I cut that shorter next time, right?
I agree. And, that's a great question to ask. Where do you think I could have done something differently?
Yeah.
Is there something within this journey that I could have done better? But the thing that I continue to repeat with the clients that I work with is like, I think of like sales is my sport, right? It's all about practice. And so in every conversation, in every cold call, whatever, you're just practicing. And when you can think of it as practice, like anything, it takes the edge off. Like, what is life? Life is practicing.
Yeah.
I was saying this to my daughter, like she was asking me some question in the car, which always happens. And I'm like, I don't know, Kaylin. I'm like, I'm just practicing with you right now because this is my first time getting this question asked by a 15-year-old. So we're gonna just practice how to answer that.
Really
You
do
know,
your best. Yeah.
you do your best with what you have.
Yeah.
And so the more you can stay grounded back, like, and this piece, or like to kind of bring us full circle, when we think about war room thinking, war room behaviors, win room behaviors, um, it's like building a muscle. So when you start to talk negatively to yourself, you catch yourself because you can literally take yourself down a spiral
Right.
of convincing yourself that that person's going to say no and in the habit of that. But it's catching the biggest thing I just said at the beginning was normalizing these negative thoughts. Everybody has them, but your competitive advantage is building this muscle. So the muscle is noticing when you start to have it. Okay. When you start to say, well, I'm just not good enough. This is, this isn't for me or whatever. This is going to go in a terrible direction. Catching yourself. So catching yourself from going there and going, nope, that's not me. I'm over here. I'm a learn it all. I'm just practicing. I'm doing my best. So it's like building this muscle that where you can catch yourself and then you shift over here into what you want, not what you don't want. So what you want, because our thoughts, our thoughts are what drive our emotions,
Yeah.
and our emotions are what drive our behaviors.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then behaviors are what drive our success.
Yeah. So if you show up in the morning thinking this could be the best day of the year, this
Yes.
could be amazing. What's going to happen today? I know something amazing is going to happen. Probably something amazing will happen. And if it, at the very least, you're setting yourself up for success because people feel your energy when you call them or when even in messages. There are people that have some really ho-hum, not exciting correspondence that makes you just not want to talk to somebody like that. And we do get ghosted. People don't reply. So you really have to work hard to be prepared and have all the tools so that you can win, right?
Absolutely. And it's I think of it as you're absolutely right. Like it is, we are energy. So people might call it woo woo. I call it a competitive advantage. So they can call it woo woo, but I'm going to be over here winning because I understand how to help, how to help people to be more present. Because the more present, the more you can remove the invisible barriers between and the resistance between you and others. Because so many people show up and it's so obvious. You can tell when someone's not being real.
Yeah.
When they're pretending, when they're playing a one size fits all
Yeah.
part, they're not being, you don't trust them. So the
Right.
quicker that you can and more consistent in how you're embodying like who you are,
Right.
that consistently and like that's who you are. And like I said, you're doing the best that you can with what you have. And you can't control anything except for yourself and how you show up over and over again. It's your practice. And like I told my daughter the other day, there's no way if you don't keep practicing, if you keep practicing, there's no way you can't get better.
Yeah.
There's no way. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. You look at it as practice.
And in sales, we need the right messaging so we can tweak our messaging. We can improve it. We can alter it. If things aren't landing well, you can look at the different steps of the process of where you're going. I also think of the Gartner research that talked about how people really need help in the buying process. They don't need more stats about what your services do, but they need to understand, how am I going to get these other people on board and my team and, how's it all going to work? And so when we help them with the process and not just our services and our products, that is another strategy to look into that can be very helpful this time of year and any time of the year, actually.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like so many of the conversations I have are with leaders that are trying to get, there've been so much change and trying to figure out how do I get my team engaged and how do I get them excited and how do I get them on board? And we are taught, or sort of we live in this world where we keep being sold.
Yeah.
We keep being sold that the answer is out there. This one more thing that. No, it is about like less is more. It's
Yes.
about foundational skills. It's about connecting effectively with your team, having them understand who you are, what you stand for, what's your leadership philosophy. The majority of leaders that I work with, that's the focus is like, how do you build? And I was going to say build, how do you identify and uncover and like stand in your leadership philosophy? And by doing that, giving people permission to stand in theirs. So the more that you can build up each of your teammates, right? People on your team, and help them to stand in their strength with their uniqueness, the things that they make them unique and stand out. That's the building that skill of trusting themselves, right? The more you can get your sellers as the leaders to trust themselves in what they're doing, the more that they will be in it and show up more effectively. Like I said, the majority of sellers are very predictable, but they're not memorable. My goal working with teams is to make those sellers memorable.
Yeah, that's really great. And so let's think of some quick tips. We'll offer maybe a couple each
Sure.
for people because the goal for this, I wanted this session to be some inspiration, just some ideas for anybody that's kind of stuck or, thinking, oh, the year's almost over. What am I going to do? I am going to suggest a couple things. And one is in addition to having revenue goals, if you're in sales or if you're a leader, a sales leader, you have some kind of revenue goals, but also have activity goals for yourself or your team. I want to see people having conversations with people every day. You shouldn't be not do you've got to do that. If you're in the business of selling your products and services, you need to talk to enough people and have a big enough pipeline. We still have pipelines, even though everything's changing. We need enough opportunities so that a percentage of those will come to closure. Not every opportunity we work with will close. In fact, many of them won't. And the longer you're in this and the more experience you have and the better your messaging and all these different things in your favor, the higher percentage will come to closure. But if you're new or you're starting out or you're in a new industry or something, you have to have a bigger amount of opportunities. So are you talking to X number of people every day? I do 3 people every day. I try to have a conversation with 3 people who are either prospective future customers of mine or they're potentially strategic referrers. They could refer people to me on a regular basis every day. 3 every day. That's what I do, and then I reward myself when I hit those activity goals, and then the revenue comes from that. How about do you have a tip?
Oh gosh, I have lots of tips. So one of the things that it's about being a lot of where we've traditionally been told, right? It's about being efficient. And a lot of people out there that are efficient, but they're not effective. So one of the things is to think about sales and like prospecting is so many people think of it as very one dimensionally. So they just go after the target, the person that they think is the person that they want to sell to. Whereas I look at it as being more 3 and 4 dimensionally. So instead of looking at that target, who is the person in that 8-person's ecosystem that also potentially would be someone that I would then have a conversation, but then potentially they know someone that I should talk with. So similar to what you're saying, really thinking about like how you're building these connective tissue of like your network and people who know people and the consistency. And this is where it comes so back to who you are is, you're having conversations, but getting out there and just meeting people, getting curious. Tell me more. You go to an event, like, oh, what made you come to an event? Like all the time it happens where all of a sudden somehow you met this really cool person and then you look and you see they're somehow connected to this person that you want to get to know.
Yeah.
And so when I think about is like, how are you out just in your interactions, showing up consistently in who you are so that everyone who knows you will say things that are consistent. And that's the trust. I mean, why do people buy from people they trust? And most people ask other people, like, should I trust this person? So if you are like this one and done salesperson who basically sells it and breaks trust, nobody's gonna, it's so that. And then in terms of like quick tips, I love to think about it as like a win jar. I actually make these for a lot of my clients, a win jar. So thinking about what are like the wins that you've had in past? What are the things that you've had success in? So that you can physically look at what like all times, because we focus on the things that we're not getting. If we're not getting the deal, but we forget, our brain forgets all the things that we've done that are amazing. And we fixate on that one thing that we're not getting instead of all these other things. So having a win jar, like a physical one that you can write down the things where, you had a great win with a customer. And maybe then that becomes the thing. You reach out to that customer. How you're doing? What's going on? Right. So really putting in front of you, reminding you yourself of all the work you've done to set the foundation of why should someone want to continue to work with you, right? You've done the work. And so it just feel like the more you can be in that confidence because of your confidence, because you have done the right work, you've built the foundation, you've done all the right things, and then you however it lands at the end of the year is how it lands at the end of the year, but you continue to look at it, your opportunities, these are lifelong.
Yeah.
Your customers that you wanna be working with, you're gonna be customers for life. And so that plus having enough in your pipeline,
Yeah.
because when things don't the more the conversations you could be having, like, don't thinking of it the same way you said, January pipeline. Like, the more conversations you have, the more you might have somebody that says, "Oh, I actually do have some money this year."
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing I want to recommend to people to do is to make a list of your supportive beliefs. Pick,
Mhm.
at least 3 things, maybe 10 things of what you're going to look at because you can put it on your wall or put it in your wherever you're sitting that when you sit down and you're about to look at your day, you have these things to look at like I'm going to have an amazing day today. Today's gonna be the best day ever. Whatever it is that you say, I always feel like I'm gonna talk to some key people I've been trying to get a hold of. Because people do ghost you. They'll open an email. Sometimes you can tell, like I have HubSpot, so I can tell someone's opened an email 3 or 4 times and they never replied. And I'm like, what's gonna get them to reply? And maybe today's they're gonna reply to me, or I'm gonna say something different to pique their curiosity to get them to send me a note of some type. So I'm doing that every day, and that helps set me up for not listening to my limiting beliefs, which we all have, as we talked about. And I'm gonna overcome those limiting beliefs because I'm gonna be more supportive of my goals.
1,000%. Like, I have sticky notes here, so this
Yeah.
is the one I'm like, find your win,
Yeah.
right? So find your win, and one thing that I would say, this is a very simple hack that you can use is, so when you go to bed at night, okay? When we go to bed at night, what do we normally do? We think through all the things that went wrong or what we were supposed to do or our to-do list, right? Like,
Yeah.
so when you go to bed, like, whatever, write down your list of the things so you don't forget them, so you can get them out of your head.
Yeah.
But when you go to bed, when you close your eyes, just take like a minute to just think about what was something that was really good today. What was a win? So what was something that was good today that I did that I'm really happy about? It could be something simple. I had a great meeting. I was able to get the kids to all their things. I have no idea. Doesn't matter. But like positive, like, I did that. That was really, really good. Okay. And then so when you go to sleep, because what you want to do, because whatever your thoughts are right before you go to sleep, are actually what you are sleeping in that whole time. So we want to focus on what you want to happen, what was good about what you already did, and then we're visualizing where you want to go and being in it.
Yeah.
So it's not just getting a deal. To me, getting a deal, yeah, that's a goal. But like, I mean, just like, how do you are visualizing yourself once you've hit your winner circle? How do you feel? Like, visualizing yourself in that, not in thinking it, but feeling it, like embodying it. And so you're already there.
Yeah.
You're already there. And so this is like a very like simple hack that when you do this, your mind already believes you're there and you're sleeping on that. So that's where your focus is and you're there and you're just in that practice of already seeing yourself in it. So
Be it.
see it, be it. Exactly.
Yep. My
So
hashtag.
yeah, I mean, it might sound like, oh, a lot of people, but it works.
It works. It
It
really works.
totally works. You
Yeah.
know, you are the problem and you are the answer. So whatever you want, stand in that and be clear in what that is, because that's your win room, right? That's how you go there.
Yep. That's Jaime Diglio. She's founder of the Win Room. Reach out to her, reach out to me. I'd love to hear your tips and ideas and strategies. We're all going to be in this together to get through to have a celebration for a successful end of the year. Thank you so much, Jamie. It's always a pleasure to see you and talk with you. One of my favorite people.
Love it. And I love that we showed up with we're like, it looked like we color coded. Like we're imbibing here. Didn't even know, right?
You didn't know? Yeah.
We're
That's
like,
great. Well,
we're like in sync.
yeah, that's great. Well, good luck to everyone and give us feedback. We'd love to hear your scenarios and offer some more support and ideas for you. Good luck.
I'm your announcer, Larry Long Jr., and we sincerely thank you for listening to this episode of Conversations with Women in Sales, encouraging you to share an episode with all of your friends and your favorite male allies. Let's work together to change the face of sales. Until next time, you can find all of our episodes at womensalespros.com/podcast.